The truth is, most people misunderstand this. They believe that the gold in their pockets is a reflection of their hard work alone. Yet they remain shackled to the relentless cycle of earning and spending, never realizing that they are walking through the gilded gates of life with the mindsets of slaves. Thousands of years ago, amidst the dust and opulence of Babylon, the wealthiest city the world had ever known, two men sat in the shadow of their own despair. Bansa, a gifted builder of chariots, and Kobi, a talented musician, found themselves paralyzed by a terrifying realization. Despite years of grueling labor and undeniable skill, their purses were as empty as the desert wind. They looked at the towering walls of Babylon, the lush hanging gardens, and the streams of gold flowing through the hands of the merchant princes, and they felt the bitter sting of injustice. Why did some men wallow in luxury while others, equally industrious, struggled for a crust of bread? This was not a question of luck, but of a hidden architecture of wealth that they had failed to perceive. Driven by a desperate hunger for dignity, they sought out Akkad, a man who had once been a humble scribe but was now whispered to be the richest man in all of Babylon. Akkad did not look at them with pity, but with the stern clarity of a master. He revealed that his own journey had begun in the same suffocating poverty until he met Algamish, a grim money lender with eyes like polished flint. Algamish had offered a trade that would change the course of history. He would reveal the secrets of wealth in exchange for a night of labor. The secret was deceptively simple, yet psychologically shattering for a man who lived day to day. Algamish told him that a part of all he earned was his to keep. He didn't mean the money used to pay the cobbler or the grocer, he meant a portion that must never be touched, a seed planted in the soil of his future. This was the birth of the first cure for a lean purse. Akkad began to save 1/10 of every copper he earned. He watched as his small pile of coins grew, but more importantly, he watched as his own sense of self-worth expanded. However, the path to wealth is guarded by the demons of ignorance. Akkad, in his early zeal, gave his savings to a brickmaker to buy rare jewels from distant lands. He was a fool. The brickmaker was cheated with colored glass, and Akkad's year of sacrifice vanished into the sands. Algamish returned, not to mock him, but to forge him. He taught the boy that you do not ask a brickmaker about jewels any more than you ask a stargazer about the price of sheep. Wealth, he realized, is a tree that grows from a tiny seed, and that seed must be watered with the wisdom of those who actually understand the nature of gold. The psychological weight of this opening parable is immense because it challenges the fundamental human instinct to consume. Most people live as conduits for money. It flows in from their labor and out to their creditors, leaving them with nothing but the exhaustion of the chase. The lesson of Akkad and Algamish is radical reclamation of agency. By paying yourself first, you are not just accumulating currency, you are asserting that your future self is more important than the temporary whims of the present. The failure of Akkad's first investment serves as a brutal reminder that passion without specialized knowledge is a recipe for catastrophe. We often mistake movement for progress and sincerity for competence. Yet the laws of finance are indifferent to our feelings. This segment of the story forces the listener to confront the great lie, the idea that earning more money will solve the problem of poverty. If a man cannot manage a copper, he will never master a talent of gold. The discipline required to set aside 10% is the forge in which the character of a wealthy man is shaped. It creates a psychological buffer against the fear of the future and transforms the worker from a victim of the marketplace into a participant in the growth of the world. Akkad's eventual success came when he learned to treat his coins as slaves that worked for him. He realized that every copper earned in interest was a child of his original investment, and those children, in turn, could have children of their own. This is the miracle of compounding, a force so powerful that it can turn a scribe into a prince. But the journey does not end with accumulation. As Akkad grew in stature, the king of Babylon himself took notice. The city was in a state of economic decay, the gold had concentrated in the hands of a few, and the masses were starving in the midst of plenty. The king did not seize the wealth of the rich, for he knew that a city of beggars cannot sustain a kingdom. Instead, he commanded Akkad to teach the people the 7 cures for a lean purse. This was a mission of national salvation. a psychological overhaul of an entire population. Akkad stood before the assembly and laid out the blueprint for financial survival. The first cure, to start thy purse to fattening, was the 10% rule. The second, to control thy expenditures, was the most difficult pill for the masses to swallow. He challenged them to look at their necessary expenses and realize that they are often just desires in disguise. Human appetites are a bottomless pit. The more we earn, the more we find reasons to spend, unless we draw a firm line in the sand. This is the battle against lifestyle creep, a psychological warfare where the enemy is our own ego. The third cure was to make thy gold multiply, turning the stagnant pool of savings into a running stream of profit. The fourth cure was the most haunting, to guard thy treasures from loss. In a world of silver-tongued schemers and get-rich-quick illusions, the wealthy man is the one who values the safety of his principle above the allure of the impossible. Akkad's voice boomed through the hall as he spoke of the fifth cure, to make of thy dwelling a profitable investment. He argued that a man who owns the roof over his head has a heart of peace and a hand that works more effectively. The sixth cure was a call to look into the shadows of old age and the tragedy of death, ensuring that thy future income is secure and thy family protected. And finally, the seventh cure, the most vital of all, was to increase thy ability to earn. This was a plea for the cultivation of the mind and the sharpening of skills. A man who stops learning stops earning. The city of Babylon was not built on gold, but on the relentless desire of its citizens to be more than they were yesterday. This philosophy turned a desert outpost into the wonder of the ancient world. As the echoes of Akkad's teachings spread through the streets, the narrative shifts to the darkest corners of the city, where the noddle of gold and the plate of wisdom were being tested in the fires of reality. Akkad's own son, Nemasa, was sent out into the world with nothing but a bag of gold and a clay tablet inscribed with the 5 laws of gold. This was the ultimate test of fatherhood and legacy. Would the boy rely on the metal, or would he rely on the mind? Nemasa, like many who inherit wealth without wisdom, fell prey to the glamour of the gambling pits and the false promises of surefire ventures. He watched in horror as his father's gold evaporated, leaving him shivering in the cold reality of his own incompetence. It was only when he reached the absolute bottom, when the gold was gone and the friends it bought had vanished, that he turned to the clay tablet. He began to read the laws he had ignored. The first law stated that gold comes to those who save. The second, that it labors for the wise. The third, that it clings to the cautious. The fourth, that it flees from those who invest in things they do not understand. And the fifth, that it vanishes from those who seek the impossible returns of the swindler. Nemasa did not beg for his father's help. Instead, he took a job as a laborer, rebuilding his life copper by copper, using the laws as his compass. When he finally returned to Babylon years later, he did not bring back just the bag of gold his father had given him, he brought back 3 bags. He proved that the wisdom on the tablet was worth more than the gold in the sack. This story is a visceral exploration of the prodigal son archetype, reframed as a financial initiation. It teaches us that loss is often the only teacher we truly listen to. The psychological shift from having to doing and finally to being is what defines a master of wealth. Nemasa's journey reminds us that the laws of the universe are consistent. They do not favor the rich, they favor the disciplined. The golden gates of Babylon did not just protect the wealthy, they stood as a silent witness to the transformation of men who refused to accept the chains of their own making. As Nemasa stood before his father, Akkad, offering 3 bags of gold for the one he had lost, the air in the room grew heavy with the realization that wealth is a spirit before it is a substance. But while some found their path through the wisdom of fathers, others were forced to find it in the depths of the slave pits. Consider the harrowing journey of Dabasir, once a proud camel trader who let the siren song of debt lure him into a life of ruin. Dabasir's story is a psychological descent into the hell of living beyond one's means. He wanted to give his wife the finest silks and his friends the most expensive wines, believing that the appearance of wealth was the same as its possession. He borrowed from the money lenders of Babylon, thinking that tomorrow's profit would always cover today's vanity. But the desert is not so forgiving. When his debts became a mountain he could no longer climb, he fled the city like a thief in the night. only to be captured by robbers and sold into slavery in a distant land. This was the ultimate price of his lean purse. He went from a man of standing to a creature who tended the camels of a harsh master. One of the master's wives, a woman named Sarah, looked at him not with pity, but with a searing question that would haunt his soul: do you have the soul of a free man or the soul of a slave? At first, Dabasir was indignant, but as he looked at his tattered rags and his bruised hands, he realized that he had possessed the soul of a slave long before he was ever captured. He had been a slave to his desires, a slave to his pride, and a slave to his creditors. This realization was the spark of his liberation. With Sarah's unexpected help, he escaped into the blistering heat of the desert with nothing but 2 starving camels and a desperate plan to return to Babylon to face his past. The journey across the sand was a literal and figurative purging. As he lay dying of thirst, he didn't dream of gold, he dreamed of his honor. He vowed that if he survived, he would pay back every copper he owed. For a man cannot be free until his debts are dead. The psychological intensity of Dabasir's redemption offers a brutal lesson on the nature of debt. Debt is not merely a financial obligation, it is a spiritual parasite that eats away at a man's courage and integrity. The story of the camel trader of Babylon provides the most practical and hopeful framework in the entire book, the clay tablet method of debt repayment. Upon his return, Dabasir did not hide. He went to every man he owed, from the powerful Mathan to the humble cobbler, and declared his intention to pay. He followed a strict, 3-part division of his earnings: 70% for the living expenses of his family, 10% for his own savings to fatten his purse, and 20% to be divided proportionally among his creditors. This 70/20/10 rule is a masterpiece of psychological engineering. It allows a man to live with dignity, to grow his own wealth even while in debt, and to slowly but surely reclaim his honor. It proves that the way out of a hole is not to stop living, but to start managing. The lesson here is that the universe respects a plan. When Dabasir's creditors saw his discipline and his unwavering commitment to the 20%, their anger turned to respect. They didn't want him to starve, they wanted their money, and they saw in his system a guarantee of eventual payment. Dabasir's transition from a fugitive to a respected merchant is a testament to the fact that where the determination is, the way can be found. It teaches us that our past mistakes do not define our future, provided we have the soul of a free man, a soul that takes responsibility for its actions and moves with purpose toward a clear goal. As Dabasir rebuilt his life, another facet of Babylonian wisdom was revealed through the eyes of Mathan, the gold lender. Mathan was a man who saw the human heart through the lens of collateral. He lived in a tension between compassion and caution. When a spearmaker named Rodon came to him, agonized over whether to lend his newfound fortune of 50 gold pieces to his sister's husband, Mathan told him the story of the farmer who could understand the language of animals. The farmer heard the ox complaining of his hard work, and the donkey, out of a misplaced sense of kindness, suggested the ox pretend to be sick so he could rest. The farmer followed the donkey's advice, but then he made the donkey do all the ox's work. By the end of the day, the donkey regretted his help. Mathan's lesson was chillingly clear: if you desire to help your friend, do so in a way that does not bring your friend's burdens upon yourself. This is a profound exploration of boundaries and the psychology of enabling. Many people lose their wealth not through their own vice, but through the virtue of helping those who are not ready to help themselves. Mathan's treasure chest of tokens, pieces of jewelry or cloth left by borrowers as security, was a map of human folly and tragedy. He showed Rodon that the safest loans are those made to people whose labor or property ensures the return of the gold. This segment of the narrative serves as a warning against emotional investing. It teaches that gold is a tool, not a toy, and to give it away without a guarantee of its return is to disrespect the labor that earned it. The spearmaker had to learn that his gold was not just a reward for his skill, but a responsibility for his future. The narrative flow then moves from the caution of the money lender to the walls of Babylon themselves. The city was under siege, a terrifying moment of existential threat that mirrored the financial sieges we all face in life. As the enemy battered against the gates, the citizens lived in a state of constant fear. They turned to the old guards upon the walls, asking if the city would hold. The guards replied with a steady confidence. The walls were strong, the gates were thick, and the defenders were prepared. This story of the walls of Babylon is a metaphor for the necessity of protection. No matter how much gold one accumulates, one is never truly wealthy without a wall of insurance and security. In the ancient world, it was stone and bronze. In the modern world, it is the diverse safeguards we put between our families and the unpredictable winds of fate. It teaches us that we cannot prevent the siege, but we can ensure our defenses are impenetrable. This part of the book emphasizes that the psychology of wealth is not just about aggression and growth, but about defense and stability. A man who builds a fortune on a foundation of sand is no richer than a man who has nothing at all. The walls of Babylon were the physical manifestation of the city's collective discipline and foresight. The focus then shifts to a deeper, more philosophical level of the Babylonian mindset, the relationship between work and luck. Most people in the city sought the favor of the goddess of good luck at the gambling tables, hoping for a sudden windfall that would solve their problems forever. But Akkad, in one of his final lectures, challenged this obsession. He argued that the goddess of luck does not hang around the gaming dens where the house always wins. Instead, she is found in the places where men are working, creating, and seizing opportunities. He told the story of a young man who had the chance to buy a flock of sheep at a bargain price in the middle of the night. But he hesitated, waiting for the morning light to be sure of his purchase. By the time the sun rose, the opportunity was gone. The lesson was sharp. Luck is often just the moment when preparation meets a quick decision. Procrastination is the thief of luck. The psychological barrier to wealth is often the habit of waiting for the perfect moment that never comes. The wealthy man is the one who recognizes a good omen and acts upon it before the wind changes. This redefined luck as something that can be courted through action rather than hoped for through chance. It shifted the power back into the hands of the individual, suggesting that we make our own luck by being the kind of people who are ready to say yes to the universe when it offers a door. This concludes the middle arc of the Babylonian wisdom, moving from the recovery of the soul to the protection of the house, and finally to the mastery of the moment. The narrative now prepares for its final, most emotional revelation, the story of Shahunada, the man who discovered that the greatest secret of all was not found in a bag of gold or a clay tablet, but in the calloused palms of a working hand. The 70/20/10 rule remains the most transformative psychological tool for anyone drowning in the sea of debt. By allocating 70% to life, 20% to debt, and 10% to the self, a person creates a rhythmic, predictable path to freedom. This system works because it eliminates the all-or-nothing mentality that leads to despair. When you continue to save 10% for yourself even while paying off debt, you are psychologically reinforcing the idea that you are a person of value, not just a debt repayment machine. This builds the wealth mindset in real time, preventing the relapse into old habits once the debt is gone. Dabbas's journey reminds us that the primary battle is internal. Once he decided he had the soul of a free man, the external world eventually aligned with that reality. The wisdom of Mathan adds a layer of necessary ruthlessness, not a ruthlessness of heart, but of logic. It teaches us that to protect our wealth, we must be willing to say no to those we love if their path leads to our mutual destruction. The walls of Babylon and the pursuit of active luck round out this philosophy by showing that a complete life requires both a strong defense and a bold offense. We are reminded that the ancient Babylonians were not just financiers, they were psychologists of the human condition. Understanding that our relationship with money is merely a reflection of our relationship with ourselves and our fears. The final secret of Babylon was not unearthed in a treasure vault, but in the memory of a man who had once been nothing more than a piece of property. Shahunada, a wealthy merchant prince, was traveling with the grandson of his old friend, Ardgula. The young man was a spoiled youth, cynical about work and convinced that his grandfather's wealth was a matter of luck and exploitation. As they rode their camels past the ruins of the Great Canal, Shahunada decided to peel back the skin of history to show the boy the raw, pulsing heart of their fortune. He confessed that he and Ardgula had met as slaves, chained together in a line of men destined for the labor pits. Shahunada had been sold because of his brother's debts. A victim of circumstance. Yet even in chains, he clung to a philosophy that seemed insane to his fellow captives. He believed that work was his only friend, while others slacked off and cursed their masters. Shahunada worked with such ferocity and skill that he made himself indispensable. He realized that a man who works well attracts the attention of those who can change his fate. It was through his reputation as a tireless worker that he caught the eye of a baker, and later, through a series of complex trades and unwavering diligence, he and Aradgula were able to buy their freedom and build a commercial empire. The gold was merely the evidence, the work was the cause. This final story serves as a profound psychological intervention for anyone who views labor as a burden to be avoided. It redefines work as a liberator, the bridge between the man you are and the man you wish to become. It suggests that the soul of the world recognizes the effort of the hand and the sincerity of the sweat, opening doors that remain locked to the idle and the entitled. The narrative arc of Babylon concludes with a radical shift in perspective. Wealth is not something you get. It is something you become through a lifetime of specific habits and a sacred respect for the process of creation. The core message of the book is that the laws of wealth are as immutable as the laws of gravity. They do not care about your social status, your past failures, or your current misery. They only care about your obedience to the principles of accumulation, investment, and protection. George S. Clason's masterpiece intends to convey that financial freedom is a psychological state achieved through the mastery of the self. By paying yourself first, you build self-respect. By controlling your desires, you build discipline. By making your gold multiply, you build a future. And by valuing work as a partner rather than a punishment, you align yourself with the productive forces of the universe. The city of Babylon fell to ruins. Its walls crumbled and its hanging gardens withered. But the clay tablets of its wisdom remain because they contain the DNA of human prosperity. The book is a call to awaken the archon within each of us, to stop being a victim of the lean purse and to start being the architect of our own empire. It reminds us that every coin we save is a seed for a tree of life, and every day we spend in disciplined labor is a brick in the wall of our own personal Babylon. The true wealth of a man is not found in the weight of his purse, but in the wisdom of his mind and the strength of his character.